We are so excited on Unbossed to have one of the Lever's finest reporters and researchers, Julia Rock. I read her work often. The Lever is doing the daggone thing. When you talk about independent media, the Lever is right up there in the top 3, baby. Yes, they are. Julia, welcome to our show.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are so glad to have you. And there's a headline. We're gonna be talking about this one article that you wrote in particular. Team, let's put up the headline: Fear and Loathing Among the Union Busters. A gathering at the National Restaurant Association's legal arm. Lawyers and executives grapple with worker uprising. And so in that article, you really paint the mood, like the opening of the article, you paint the mood and intentions of the gathering of restaurant owners, their lawyers, supporters, upper management, even the whole notion of Conrad's, stay in place, because they was kind of rattled after a speech that was given by the NLRB General Counsel Jennifer, warning the audience of the consequences that they would face if they fired workers for unionizing and other actions that the restaurant industry may take against employees. Talk to us about this article. Why was it important for you to paint the mood even before you got into the meat of what they were there to gather about?
Well, so like you said, this is sort of an unusual gathering in some sense of restaurant executives, their corporate lawyers, where the keynote speech was given by someone who may be seen as an enemy of these people, the top enforcer of labor law in the US, Jennifer Abruzzo. Like you said, she's the general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board. So she goes up and gives a speech about, how things are changing a little bit under the Biden administration, how companies that retaliate against their workers are going to be held accountable, about how she's looking to sort of expand interpretations of labor law to protect workers. And this really creates sort of an anxious, unhappy mood among the executives and lawyers who are in the audience.
Yeah, and I think it was Chappelle Phillips who, after that, he grabbed the microphone, as you write in the article. Please do not lead the conference. It's all better from here. And him thinking it's better from here, that we're gonna conspire against these employees and forget really what the general counsel just said was really my interpretation. And the National Restaurant Association is sometimes referred to as the other NRA. I think you point that out in the article, and this is certainly not a positive reference, especially for those of us who really are champions for workers' rights. And one of the things that you highlight in the article is that the restaurant industry has long coordinated efforts to suppress labor costs through the NRA, a multi-million-dollar lobbying machine funded by its restaurant members and by the fees that workers pay for required food safety classes, according to a recent New York Times report. And Julie, what I found so unacceptable is that the fees that the workers are paying into this fund is being used to undermine their efforts to fight for better wages, work conditions, and benefits.
Yeah, so this is really a pretty devious scheme by the NRA, which is that the group runs a program for food safety certification classes that in a lot of states, restaurant workers are required to take to be eligible to work in restaurants. So the NRA is running this program that workers are required to partake in to have their jobs, and then using the profits from those food safety certification classes to lobby against better working conditions in restaurants for workers.
And do most workers know that they're funding efforts against them? Actually, most of them, do you think, know that this money is going to be used to thwart their ability to make their lives better?
No, I definitely don't think so. And there was a class action lawsuit filed against the NRA for basically misleading workers who were, putting their money into this program that was moving to lobby against them.
Yeah, I'm so glad that lawsuit, and it's so deceptive what they are doing to the workers. And then the following tweet that I want us to put up, it references, quote, the blood boiling nature of union busting, and really, really highlighting your article. And Morley, states in the tweet, an amazing blood boiling portrait of a union busters conference, swill guzzling, fake, nice corporate hogs, curdling in amusement at their employees' misery and grunting in disapproval every time workers try to improve their lives. I mean, Julia, it seems to me from your reporting that this gathering wasn't just this, it was for them to plot and plan on how to keep the status quo within the restaurant industry.
Right. Well, as that tweet points out, there was a presentation done by two lawyers from Jackson Lewis, one of these big management side labor law firms, which is sort of a euphemism for union busting, about sort of the rise of unions in the restaurant and hospitality industries.
And incredibly, they invest a whole lot of money. The lobbying efforts of this industry to maintain the status quo, in my opinion, is very chilling. I'm sure you probably shared that same one. So this group has spent its war chest, you go on to say in your article, and I encourage everybody to read this article. The group has spent its war chest on lobbying campaigns to preserve a sub-minimum wage for tip workers who are disproportionately young, women, and people of color, and far more likely to live in poverty than regular minimum wage workers, and to help block state and federal sick leave proposals and minimum wage. If we can put that up side by side with Julia and I mean, Julia, to me, this is part of the heart of the matter here, that they are using their enormous lobbying power, their owner-donor status within but both on the state, primarily state and federal level, to stop workers from being able just to even live a good life. And the sub-minimum wage worker, can you share with us what the sub-minimum wage is and about how much it is? I know it may vary state by state, but on average, there is an hourly rate.
Yeah, so the sort of keystone achievement of the NRA has been preserving this sub-minimum wage, and right now, the sub-minimum wage federally is $2.13 an hour. And this is a wage that tipped workers can be paid, provided that they spend a certain amount of their time doing tipped work. So mostly we think of that as being waiters and waitresses. But the sub-minimum wage, which is as crazy as it sounds, has been $2.13 an hour for 3 decades. And it's been the great achievement of the NRA to keep that in place. And this is a wage where far more workers making a sub-minimum wage than a regular minimum wage, as you can imagine, live below the poverty line. These are more young workers, women, and people of color than other types of workers. So this is really an impoverishing wage that has been preserved by the NRA because its restaurant industry members sort of rely on it to pad their profits.
Yeah, and part of it, I mean, we being taxpayers, subsidize most of those workers because they're not making a wage that's far from a living wage, but they need to be subsidized through other services, whether it's Medicaid or food stamp relief, that kind of thing. And so it really is a smack in the face to the taxpayer, and we have to do something about that. Julie, in our remaining time, is there anything, One Fair Wage comes to mind. I want to throw that out in terms of organizations that are working very hard to turn the tide, both on the minimum wage and the sub-minimum wage. But is there anything else that people can do to get involved and also support the efforts of workers in this industry?
Well, yeah, another group that comes to mind that's been working on this is the Restaurant Opportunity Center, and they've also been working on things like union efforts in the restaurant industry. But I will say what came out in this story is that ultimately it seems like the thing that these chain restaurants are worried about the most is something like what's happened at Starbucks with this really rapid union campaign happening in their chains. So I think it's worth noting that what they're scared of is worker unions.
Yeah, the woke movement, so to speak, barreling through and helping these workers unionize, because most of them are not unionized. Well, thank you, Julia Rock, so much for your work. We hope to have you back on Unbossed. Please read her article. It is an important article, Fear and Loathing Among the Union Busters.